Nancy, welcome.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for inviting me to your podcast here today.
I'm glad to have you. Excited for our conversation. I thought that we would start off. You today are running McKay CEO Forums, which we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. But before that, you were a solo independent consultant. You were generating over $1 million per year, and I'd love to know if you could just kind of tell us a little bit about that business and why you ended up transitioning away from that business to build McKay CEO Forums.
Well, maybe I'll start by saying that in 2005, I had a date night with my husband, Rob, who's been my long-term business partner. And we were just talking about, he was a banker and that was sucking the life out of him. And I had been a professor and a large global consultant for many, many years. We had two little kids and a big mortgage. And I just said to him, look, you know what? I think it's time for you to quit your job as a banker. I'll quit my job as a professor and global consultant, and let's start our own company and become entrepreneurs.
Mm.
And he basically said, there's no way we're going to do that. We have these two little kids and a big mortgage. And he said, that's never going to happen. And after the second bottle of wine, we toasted to, we were going to quit our jobs, become entrepreneurs, and start a consulting company. And that was the beginning of $1 Million Consulting, actually, because we had these two little kids and a big mortgage in North Vancouver. And I thought to myself, how am I going to support the kids? And back then, when I first started, I didn't think about I was going to be $1 million consultant. I was just thinking, how am I going to earn enough revenue to be able to feed the kids and sustain our mortgage and continue to live in Vancouver? So honestly, what we ended up doing is really surrounding ourselves with game changers. And that's why I'm such a huge believer in this message of, I just thought to myself, who has been there and done that before? I'm just going to surround myself with people who have been incredibly successful at building a consulting coaching practice and get all their shortcuts, save a lot of time, and just learn how to do this. And one by one, I started to meet people in different parts of the world that were running very, very successful consulting practices. So I started to get, how did they do it? And what I learned was that mastering referrals was going to be so key to build a very, very successful consulting practice. So every single client I worked with, I would ask them to give me a testimonial, and then I would ask them to recommend 3 other people that could benefit from the work that I had done. And that literally was a game-changing idea and strategy, was mastering referrals and being consistent and delivering high-quality work and continuing to get introduced to dream clients.
Yeah, I want to ask you to go back for a moment to the time between the first and second bottle of wine, because it sounds like initially Rob was maybe a bit dismissive of the idea or not as open to it as you were. Something shifted, and I mean, the effects of alcohol do wear off at some point. Yet you continue to move forward with that idea. What did you both see? What did you agree to? What actually happened between that first and second to get you on that path and decide to actually move forward with it and take it from just being an idea to actually something that you both were committing to?
I think what happened was I just said, look, the backup plan is you go back to getting a job and I go back to getting a job, which is not what we wanted. We wanted to become entrepreneurs. But the reality is, when you think about what's the worst possible scenario if this doesn't work out? And so when we both looked at each other and said, okay, we can always get jobs and go back to working for the man, is what we said. And that was enough to get us to have the courage. I think the other thing is we really didn't know what we didn't know. So I literally had 90 days of panic attacks after I quit my job and Rob quit his job. I was like, I don't think I can do this. Like, I don't see how this is going to work. And a lot of people along the way that helped me. And I talked to my doctor, and I thought like I was 40 at the time. And I said, I think I'm dying of a heart attack. She said, no, you're not. You're having panic attacks because you're taking a big risk. And so she was been one of my game changers. She said to me, look, if you believe in yourself and you just figure out what your strengths are, and you want to like make a difference in the world, you're going to be successful. And she was a very successful entrepreneur that started her own medical practice. So I learned a lot from her, and she gave me a lot of courage to just stay the course and start to surround yourself with positive people that are going to believe in you. Because there's so many people that said to me, what? You're going to do what? And so it was like, she just said, don't even listen to those people. Just focus on finding people, been there, done that before, that have been successful, learn from them. You're going to make a ton of mistakes, but just believe in yourself. And that's actually when I discovered Strength Finder, which it's just been a really fundamental tool for me to help me understand that, shift my mindset from, oh my gosh, panic attacks, I'm never going to be successful, to, well, what if I use my strengths and really every day for the rest of my life build on my strengths so I can make the biggest difference in the world. And that tool has been just like, I've used that tool with so many CEOs and so many people
Right.
to help them.
So Nancy, just for those who may not be familiar with Strength Finders and the assessment kind of connected, could you just give a quick little outline of what is it and maybe how you've used it? I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but beyond that, how you've applied it into your business or working with other leaders?
Well, when I discovered that tool, I did the test and it came up with my top 5 strengths. And it's evolved now. I think you can get your top 20 strengths or what have you, but top 5 was enough for me to get through my panic attack phase.
Right.
And I literally wrote on a yellow sticky my top 5 strengths, like achiever and learner and self-assurance and relator, and woo is one of the strengths, winning others over. Those were my top 5 strengths. And I'd have it on the yellow sticky on my computer. And every day I would look at my strengths and say, how am I going to use my strengths to make the biggest difference, to serve my clients, to serve the rest of the world? And so then I ended up using that as a team building tool when I was doing team building and leadership development and what have you. Now I think you can go online, like there's books called Strength Finder 2.0, and you can go online and take the test. You don't even have to buy the book. You don't have to hire a facilitator or anyone. You can just take it. And it's just a great language to get people to really think about every single human being has strengths. And if we could shift from trying to find weakness and tell people all the things that are messed up about them to shifting them to, what are your strengths? And let's make sure you're spending most of your time, like 80% of your time, in your areas of strength. That's how you're going to be passionate, and that's how you're going to make the biggest difference. Not, oh my gosh, I'm horrible at spreadsheets, which makes me like a loser. It's like, I have other strengths, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
How much of that shift to really focusing more and more on your strengths, and it sounds like paying a lot less attention to areas that some might consider, maybe you consider yourself to be weak in, how much of that is connected to the shift from the work that you were doing as a kind of solo independent consultant to actually building out McKay CEO Forums? Was that part of the kind of the impetus or the pull for you to move away from being a solo consultant, or was there something else that you were seeing in the marketplace that had you leave what for some people would be, a very desirable position as a solo, consultant earning over $1 million per year? Why give kind of quote unquote give that up to start something new?
I got lucky and I got invited to be a speaker for a CEO group that was based in Vancouver. There were 14 best managed company CEOs from all different industries, and they had this peer group. And one of my clients was a member of that peer group. I didn't even know what these things were. I had just finished doing a strategic planning project. This was Ted Tickner with Mr. Loop Canada, as a long-term client and member of MacKay CEO Forums as well. So Ted said, well, you had such a huge impact on our strategic planning project. Why don't you come and tell the story, how you did that, to a bunch of guys that I meet with, CEOs. And I thought, sure, Ted, happy to help you. And I didn't know anything about what this group of guys, and back then it was all guys, I didn't know what they did other than they met to support each other. So I gave a talk on, told the story of the strategic planning session. Then after that, the chair of that group said, Nancy, we'd like to throw your name in the hat to become our chair. And I nearly fell off my chair because this was 18 years ago and they didn't allow women into the group. And I said, like, I don't know what you guys do after the speaker finishes, and I don't have any judgment, but if you want me to be your chair and meet with you guys on an ongoing basis, then you're going to need to invite women into the group. And so they had a big meeting to discuss it, and they made the decision to allow women in, which I'm so grateful to those 14 guys, because many of them are still members and my mentors and what have you. And social change happens one person at a time. So that was the beginning of MacKay CEO Forums, because once I started chairing that CEO group, I thought to myself, one day of my time with 14 CEOs, and it's not about me, it's all about them talking about business, family, and personal. And they would help each other through everything. And then they would leave the meetings with greater courage and confidence, and also learn that they didn't have to sacrifice their health and their important personal and family relationships. So I thought, one day of my time, I can help 14 CEOs. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And that's when I had to have another date night with 2 bottles of wine with Rob, because to your point, it was a fundamental shift.
Yeah.
And I said, there's no place I'd rather be. Being a chair enables me to use all of my strengths all the time. And it's also a way to just really make a huge impact in the world. And so I said, we're going to stop doing the independent consulting work. Well, he never did the delivery work. He was behind the scenes doing sort of the accounting and finance and what have you. I said, we're going to be building these peer groups all across the country so that it wouldn't have to be lonely at the top, at least not for the CEOs that I was working with. So for the first 5 years of MacKay CEO Forums, once I talked Rob into this is what we're going to do, then, and I'm so lucky that this is another key that I would just want to point out. In addition to, I married so well, and I'm so lucky to have Rob as my business partner and husband, and we've raised kids and built companies together for 25 years. And also, it's having people that believe in you. Like, he really believes in me.
Sure.
So I can come up with crazy ideas, things that have never been done before. And eventually, if I can talk him into it, then it's probably going to be a good idea. I'm so grateful he's shot down a lot of ideas that were really bad ideas. And so that's been just a beautiful combination as my business partner, having
fantastic.
that, right? So yeah, then we started to scale.
And Nancy, how deep were you or into really doing the peer forums, working with these 14 CEOs? How much time went by of you doing that before you decided to transition away from doing your solo consulting work into this new kind of model and business? Like, how long did that take before you made that transition fully?
That was about 5 years, because once I talked Rob into we were going to convert to a peer group business, I built 10 of these peer groups across the country, and I was still doing my consulting work. And what I loved about the peer groups was, when you build a peer group, that's recurring revenue. And in the world of consulting and having 2 little kids and a big mortgage, I was like, I started chairing these groups. In addition to, I love the work and all my strength. It was subsidized marketing, because the members would want to hire me to do my consulting work. And it would be year after year after year, they would be renewing their memberships. And I could see my consulting work, I could do it, and maybe it was going to be a 1-year project or whatever, but I just couldn't find a way to do consulting work where it was going to be a forever recurring revenue stream. So it took 5 years to like build a bunch of groups, keep doing my consulting work. And then that was the next date night with 2 bottles of wine versus just a couple glasses of wine, where I said, okay, now I'm going to transition out completely of doing any solo practitioner or consulting work to really scale MacKay CEO Forums into a multi-million-dollar business.
Let's just establish again, for those we've talked about, the CEO forums and the concept of this peer group, but for those who may still not be really familiar or completely understand, what is this thing? Can you just quickly summarize what is MacKay CEO Forums? What does the business model look like?
Well, I always like to start with our dream at MacKay CEO Forums is to populate the world with inspiring leaders. And we believe that business leaders are our best hope for making our world a more inspiring world. And that's exactly why we offer confidential peer support to the hundreds of CEOs, executives, and business owners across Canada. So that's sort of the context of MacKay CEO Forums. And the forum chair role, and I still chair a group that I started 15 years ago. We've been on the journey of life and business and family for 15 years. The role of the forum chair, so I meet with my group 6 times a year for a day. And every time we meet, we have a 1-hour speaker on a topic that's relevant to CEOs. And so we just had a speaker on Chat GPT. We had one on the economic update. We interview interesting fireside speakers that are very high profile business leaders in the community. So there's a 1 hour of a speaker. And then after the speaker leaves, we get into the confidential part of the meeting where there's 14 CEOs from all different industries in the room. They each put a business issue on the table, personal and family as well, that they want some help with. After they've put all their issues on the table, then we do the peer learning where people just share their experiences. So someone might say, I think I need to fire my CFO. Or someone might say, I'm having a fight with my board chair. Or someone might say, I want to expand into Quebec. So whatever your issue is, you're putting it on the table. And then we get people to tell stories. Who's been there and done that before, what worked and what didn't work. And that's our version of peer support. And then they make commitments at the end of the day. And then 2 months later, they come to their next confidential peer group meeting. And so as a chair, my role is not to be the star in the room. It's to get them to be very vulnerable with each other, to park their egos, just to be real human beings, and to just put all of their business, family, personal issues on the table, learn from each other, and make commitments. And so that they meet every other month in a facilitated session. And as the chair, that's what my role is, to facilitate their conversations during those meetings.
So you spent 5 years building this out yourself, right? Running these different groups before you started bringing in additional chairs. And today, right, you have, I don't know, 40, 50, 60 chairs across Canada. So currently only in Canada, but I know there's lots of opportunity and, you're looking beyond going forward. How did you kind of think about that? For some people, this kind of a model of, you have CEOs or leaders on one side, you then need the coaches, consultants, facilitators on the other side. It's a bit of a chicken and egg. It's a bit of a kind of a marketplace model. How did you wrap your head around that? So I know you brought the CEOs, leaders in first because you were the one facilitating, but when you decide to expand beyond yourself, where do you turn to? Where do you kind of go? What steps do you take to find those other chairs to come in and expand the business?
Well, to your point, we do have over 60 chairs now across Canada, from Victoria to St. John's, Newfoundland, and everything in between. And the biggest source of our chairs is our current chairs. And they've really helped us double and triple and continue to expand our community of forum chairs. Our members are phenomenal and they really believe in peer support. They recommend forum chairs. Many of our members, once they've sold their businesses or moved on to their next chapter and quit the corporate world and they become chairs. And then it's building relationships with people like you, Michael, who you've spent, I don't know how many years of building a community of very, very successful consultants and educating them and helping them thrive and become their own entrepreneurial consultants. So it's relationships beyond our MacKay community, and the core of our members, our chairs come from our MacKay community. Same thing with our members. Our members recommend other members because they really believe in the power of peer support and they invest in their top executives. And so it's a community of people that really, it's the mastering referrals and creating referral culture that's been very instrumental at our growth.
You have a very unique kind of position, Nancy, in that you've not only consulted and worked directly with a lot of these leaders, but you've thousands of, or I should say hundreds at least of CEOs, at any given time, thousands over the years that you've had access to. When you think about the kind of the most successful leaders, CEOs, people at the kind of executive ranks, what do you believe drives them? And I'm asking from the perspective of, consultants are looking to work with and serve leaders all the time, yet they don't always necessarily know what's actually going on in the mind of somebody who's running an organization. From your experience, what do you believe drives them? What is a typical CEO or leader thinking most about?
I think it goes down to passion.
Mm.
So my passion is to populate the world with inspiring leaders. And I'm grateful that our organization, that's our purpose, it's our why. And I fundamentally believe in what we do, and I love our community. And so that's what drives me after 18 years of MacKay CEO Forums, is the passion I have to make a difference in the world and to make a difference in Canada. And every successful CEO that I've had the honor and privilege of working with, it's, if you get down to, they jump out of bed in the morning and bust their butts because they really believe in the difference they want to make, and they care about their employees, the types of people that join MacKay CEO Forums. These CEOs and executives, they want to be the best version of themselves. They want to continue to raise their leadership game. They're driven to just make the biggest contribution every day in business, family, and personal. And so I think it really comes down to passion and strengths. Going back to that, right? Because if you're in your zone of being able to apply your strengths every day, then you're jumping out of bed in the morning. You just can't wait to get started. But if you're in a role or you're in a business where you don't have that passion, you're not able to use your strengths. I think that's why there's a lot of suffering going on in the corporate world, is people just are not in roles where their passion is aligned and their strengths are aligned. But typically, if you have that top CEO job, to be successful, you have to really be passionate and be working in your areas of strength to be successful.
So putting on your consultant hat for a moment, Nancy, knowing what you know about CEOs and leaders, knowing what drives them, everything that you just mentioned, if you're a consultant wanting to attract more CEOs, more executives as clients, or to build relationships with first, what do you think about? How would you approach? How would you try and get in front of these leaders to build a successful relationship with them?
Well, I'm going to go back to talking about mastering referrals, because I've literally worked with hundreds of consultants in order to build MacKay CEO Forums in our community
Sure.
of consultants. And I would say that the number one mistake consultants make is they do not master referrals. And when you master referrals, you consistently ask every single client to introduce you to other dream clients. If you don't do that, you're not going to be living the dream of working with the types of clients that you love working with. And again, how can you be a successful consultant if you're not clear on? Oftentimes I'll ask consultants when they're talking about being a forum chair, who's your dream client? Who are your dream clients? And usually I get, well, I work with these people and these people. Yeah, but like, if I could wave a magic wand,
Right.
and you could work with anyone you wanted, do you have a sense of who that would be? So getting clarity around who are your dream clients, because you know your strengths, you know where you're at with your own private practice, who do you want to be working with and serving? Then you start to say, hey, Michael, you're a dream client. I love working with you. Here's why. Can we brainstorm with your permission? Let's brainstorm on other people that are similar to you, their growth mindset. They want to really scale their business, like whatever that is, and
Sure.
ask people. That's how you continue to get clear on dream clients and have more. So it's that mastering referrals. And then, of course, you're brilliant at doing the work around, and you have to build a marketing machine, and you have to be out there and build your own. I mean, I've written a couple books, and so it's building the brand. That's like a slower, ongoing. You've just got to do that. But anyone that's looking for new dream clients and speeding up, because when I first got started, I had to pay the bills. Speeding up, getting connected to the right people. You need to.
What do you think holds most people back from actually asking for referrals or doing that work?
I've been rejected thousands of times in my life, Michael. I'm sure you have too. You wouldn't be as successful as you are if you weren't rejected thousands of times, right? So most people fear rejection, because if I say to you, hey, Michael, how did it go with this project? if I ask you that question, you might say, to be honest with you, Nancy, I was really disappointed with X, Y, Z. But if I don't ask you, I'm just going to assume it all went well. I'll collect the check. And again, part of mastering referrals is you have to start by saying, Michael, how did it go with the project that we just completed? Or we're halfway through the project. Better yet, we're halfway through the project. How did it go? And then if you say to me, this is fantastic, Nancy, it's the best ever, great. Michael, with your permission, I'd like to brainstorm who else, because wouldn't you want people that matter to you to get access to this type of an outcome that you're hoping for? So it's fear of rejection, because even if I'm doing a great job for you and I say, Michael, with your permission, can we brainstorm other people? You might say, no, I'm really not comfortable. I don't like doing that, which there's a certain percentage of the population, they're just not going to do it. So it's fear of rejection. And I think I just say to any consultant that I talk to, it's like, put yourself out there. And I just pat myself on the back every time I'm rejected. And I feel good about the fact that I'm playing big and wanting to make the biggest difference in the world.
Yeah, I love that. So today, Nancy, you have a team. I know you've shared with me just in conversations we've had previously that you're building the team, you're hiring, you're always looking for good people. And I'm wondering, when do you personally decide that it's time to hire? Just knowing what you know today, maybe not when you got started, but how do you actually think through when is the right time to hire and bring on somebody to join the team?
Well, when it comes to our leadership team, we're in a significant growth phase of our business. And Rob and I just bought the company back. So we're back to being majority owners, and we have a new shareholder team. And so in order to scale the business, you have to continue to invest in people. And I coach a lot of CEOs and business owners where it's painful that you have to actually hire people before you get the growth and the revenue. And I haven't ever met anyone that's figured out a solution to hire in advance in order to scale. So that's a big thing, is like when you're committed to scaling, then you have to invest in putting the people. And also the way we scale and grow is through forum chairs. So we're in a significant growth phase in terms of attracting independent coaches and consultants who have extensive experience working with CEOs and executives that believe in the power of peer support and that would like to become part of our McKay community. So it's two things, right? It's building the team, and it's also getting the message out that there are a lot of opportunities for people that can do this work, independent coaches and consultants that want an additional lucrative revenue stream, to join our McKay team of forum chairs.
And when you think about hiring, I know you said there's no way around. If you want to grow, right, then you're going to need to bring people on. Is there any kind of model, or maybe this is more of a Rob question, knowing his background in banking and finance and so forth, but is there a model that you use? Like, do you think about, if we're going to hire somebody, they need to bring at least this level of value, or they have to bring this amount of additional revenue into the company? Is there any kind of framework or model that you use when it comes to hiring?
I think that it really depends on the role, right? Like, so it's kind of, CEOs always talk about rule of thumb. If you hire someone who's a business development person, then they've got to generate like 4 times whatever their compensation is,
Right.
to make it worthwhile. Or I hear CEOs talking about, if you hire a marketing person, they need to be generating a 6 times return on the investment you make. And so I think it depends on the position, and it depends on the nature of the business and where it's at in terms of what is the ROI per employee, if that's what the question is.
Yeah. Talking about your team for a moment, just because I think a lot of people will be thinking about this, or they're often thinking about their model and how can they best grow and what are the different options that they can take to achieve that level of growth. You went from being a successful solo consultant to still consulting, but also doing this kind of peer work in groups with CEOs, to then later deciding that you're going to stop doing solo consulting and be fully dedicated to actually running and operating the business of CEO peer groups. Why do you decide to do that? I mean, why not just continue to do your consulting and to have some of these CEO peer groups on the side? I know you talked about kind of the dream, the vision, but I wonder if you considered any other models of maybe different paths that you could have taken, and why you feel that you landed on this one.
I just fell in love with peer groups. I started sharing that one peer group, which is still part of our McKay peer groups today. I don't chair that group anymore because I had to transition out of all of my groups with the exception of one. I kept one. And I just fell in love with peer support. I just thought, there's no place I'd rather be. There's such a huge need. And it was just pure passion and need. And that's really what led me to say, despite people saying, what? That's crazy. You don't know anybody in Toronto. You don't know any, like so many naysayers. I thought, the world needs more peer support. And so this is what's going to happen. And I think that also there's this place in, I think, a consultant's journey, which I meet a lot of consultants that are exploring the forum share opportunity. And they've kind of reached this, they've been a consultant for so long doing what they do that I don't know if it's boredom or not enough challenge, or it's lonely for consultants too. I mean, it's lonely at the top for CEOs, which is the big value proposition for CEOs and executives joining these peer groups. It's also lonely for solo practitioner consultants. And so figuring out how do you then evolve, as for people listening that want to stay a solo practitioner, how do you continue to challenge yourself so that you're always on your game and you're innovating and you're finding new ways to keep yourself inspired, and you keep learning and growth and investing in your own learning and growth so that you are also always on your game.
Is there anything, through this journey that, as you've been continuing to be exposed to all these CEOs and leaders across the country, any misconceptions or anything that you've realized about how CEOs operate, how leaders operate, that maybe the average consultant you think misunderstands or just doesn't see? I mean, you've been kind of, behind the scenes, behind the curtain with so many of these leaders. Is there anything that you believe the standard average consultant probably doesn't see or misunderstands or overlooks or just doesn't get that you get or that you've seen?
The big thing is that CEOs are human beings just like the rest of us. And whether I was doing a CEO group for $1 billion global CEOs or one for small entrepreneurial or what have you, it's every CEO is a human being. They have a business goals, they have personal goals, they have family goals. And if you support people, their whole being, in any way that you can, you will become someone that's a lifeline for your clients. And I would say that a lot of consultants really just focus on, I'm the expert and I have this expertise and that's what this is about, instead of really thinking about, I'm actually building a relationship with someone for the long term because I really want to help this person, whether I'm going to be engaged with them or not. Like I really want to. And I have relationships with people that I still remember them. They were my first consulting gig, and I helped their kids and I helped their business, and it was just human nature for me. And then as I started to do this work and meet like hundreds of consultants, I would realize that people are just so overly focused on, I'm the expert in this and this is who I am, instead of being a human being and caring about people.
Well said. We talked about before, what you went through in terms of the transition and the panic attacks and all of that stuff that so many people go through, but don't necessarily share that they've experienced. So I first of all just want to show respect for you being open to talking about that, because I think a lot more people go through that kind of stuff than, again, they're willing to share. But as you mentioned, all business owners, all of us have faced challenges, personal, of course, on the business side. And I know you've shared that you've really, over the years, focused more and more on your strengths, putting the naysayers to the side. But yet still, I would imagine there are personal challenges that come up, or things that maybe just aren't going well, or just a struggle inside of the business. And I'm wondering today, how do you handle that? Like, I know for me personally, Nancy, when I feel like something isn't going that well, or something unexpected comes up, for a second, I can feel it. It's like in my stomach, and it knocks me for a second. But I found that I'm able to bounce back much faster than I probably would have, a decade or more back. And I'm wondering, how do you process that? How do you kind of take the punches, if you will, when they come your way? Any approach or mindset or any kind of tool or just something that you use that you feel allows you to get back on track and keep moving and keep building the business?
Well, there's a couple things. One is self-care.
Mm.
So I'm an early morning person. I get up at 4 a.m. every morning, and I try to protect 4 to 6 a.m. so I can get on my Peloton, work out with my personal trainer, meditate, take care of me, and just create the space for what's it really take for me to be the best version of myself every day.
Mm.
And I'm a piece of work. Like, I need self-care time so that when I am helping other people, and we all know that there's this mental health pandemic,
Sure.
and people are stressed out and freaked out and cranky, and right. And so I can be the best version of myself, even if people are like not at their best when they're dealing with me. So that's the
Mm.
number one strategy, is just like self-care and really honoring that. And then asking for help. And you came to our summit. I think you heard me talk about that up on stage. It's just, my journey has been lead with generosity, and I've helped a lot of people, and I have asked for help from a lot of people. And what goes around comes around, and not being afraid to just pick up the phone and say, you know, I remember one time I almost went blind. I was traveling and I got this bacterial infection. Literally, I had these two little kids running this company, and Paul Debord was he saved my eyesight. He unfortunately passed away recently, but I remember lying in my bed in a dark room, because he said, you cannot leave your room for 10 days. And, you have all this stuff to get your eyes back on track. And I thought to myself, I could go blind. I remember saying to Rob, I think I could go blind. Like, this is a serious risk. How am I going to be the
Mm.
CEO of MacKay CEO Forums if I go blind? And I remember him saying to me, it's okay. I'll walk you up to the podium and you'll be able to still do your thing if that's what happens, right? So and reaching out to my friends going like, this is the situation that I'm in, so that I feel like a lot more courage and confidence to tackle anything
Mm.
and believe that I can handle it. So again, I've been there for many, many people over the years, and so many people have helped me. So when the going
Have
gets,
you,
yeah.
I was going to ask you, sorry to interrupt. I was wondering, have you always been that way, or is that something that over time you've just kind of appreciated the power of asking for help or talking to people, or like back in the day? Is that when you were earlier in your business journey, were you also that open? Or I know in my case, when I started, 20 something years ago, first consulting business, I thought I always had to put on the professional image. I couldn't really open up and, share personal stories. And especially when I was in Japan running one of our companies over there, being surrounded by people that were much older than I was, you know, I wasn't really speaking Japanese at that time at a fluent level, and so I had a lot of apprehension and a lot of kind of self-esteem, and I just didn't feel like I could really be open all the time. Over time, of course, that has changed for me. But I'm wondering, for you, has that always been the case, or what were things like earlier on for you?
Well, I would say that earlier on, I had a mindset of, when I set a goal,
Mm-hmm.
like, I did my PhD in New Zealand in part-time 3 years while I worked full-time. And I remember when I got to New Zealand, I thought to myself, who's been there and done that before in like less than 3 years? Because I knew I was going to want to come back to Canada. And there are like 85 million sheep and only 3 million people there. And I loved New Zealand, but I just knew I couldn't be hanging around too long trying to get this done. So it's like I was looking all over the world. Who's been there, done that before, that's going to help me accomplish this goal? So I always had the mindset of, surround myself with game changers. Don't try to
Mm.
figure it out myself. Like, reach out, find whoever it is. And back then, it wasn't that easy to find somebody to help me
Right.
get my PhD done. So fast forward to today's world, it is so easy to find game changers. Whatever goal you set, whether it's business, family, personal, there's somebody on the planet that's been there and done that before. And it's not that difficult to find those game changers, right? So that's the piece. I've always had a mindset, surround myself. The asking for help when you're in a vulnerable place was when I had my 90 days of panic attacks. And that was where I realized that, like, if I'm going to be a successful entrepreneur, it's completely out of my comfort zone. And so I'm going to have to ask people for help. I'm going to have to park my ego. I'm going to have to fail and fail fast and just go for it. And then I realized, it was easier for me to ask for help when I led with generosity, because I was always saying, hey, Mike, I don't know how I'm going to help you. But if you're able to help me in this moment as to what my goals are, I promise you, I will come back and I will find a way to help you. So that made it easier. And that really, I learned so much on that journey from, so moving to entrepreneur, solo practitioner, a huge self growth, learning and growth opportunity.
What a great example. Nancy, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing a bit of your story and journey. I also want to make sure that people can learn more about MacKay CEO Forums, and especially those in Canada, since you're right now at the time of this recording in Canada. But regardless, I think for anyone who is interested in learning more about the business, the model, it's fascinating, the work that you all do. So where's the best place for people to go to learn more?
I would recommend people go to McKayCEOForums.com.
All right. We will have that all linked up in the show notes.
All right. Thanks, Michael.